What is up YouTube? I'm Royal, I'm rank 1 Wildrift. Actually I'm like rank 25 right now, but if you want to see me get rank 1, tune into my stream. We're pushing for rank 1, almost streaming every day, so make sure you tune in. So now let's get into my 6.2 C tier list and let's see what has been changed over the previous 2 patches, because I actually skipped the tier list last patch because I felt that the patch was too small and everything was kind of the same with like a couple differences, and I didn't really want to make a full tier list around that. So instead we're making a tier list this patch for both patches. So we haven't had too many crazy changes. Nasus got an extremely small placebo buff, not really gonna consider that a big buff to Nasus, however it makes him a little more viable, especially in his winning matchups. Jace received the buff, however I don't think that he's super OP in the Baron lane specifically. The buff was targeted more for jungle Jace, which I still don't think it's that big after trying it out myself. In my patch breakdown I thought it would be bigger than it actually is, but I end up not really being that big of a deal. We also had some item changes, and this one I'm slightly hesitant to put Yone in the God tier because his main item, Bloodthirster, finally did receive some nerfs. I generally don't think he's as good as Rumble, Aatrox, and Ornn, but I'm gonna keep him in the God tier because the Bloodthirster nerfs. Again, I still think the item is really good. I don't think it was that big of a deal, but Baron lane will mostly be the same. A lot of viable picks, tanks, bruisers, right? Bruisers are mostly dominating, a lot of split push bruisers, especially with the buffs to Hullbreaker. I've put Sion a little higher, especially with the Hullbreaker changes, and in general Sion has kind of been a lot better than I expected him to be, so maybe he should have been higher in previous tier lists as well. But I'll admit when I'm wrong and I'm gonna make adjustments. I believe Seth got some small buffs in the patch before this one, but they're definitely not big enough to warrant him being S tier. I think he's just an A tier champion. However, I still think that Seth is a decent choice. Anything in A, S, or obviously God tier I think is really good. It's the B tier champions that I'm a little worried about. Kayle did get nerfed. I didn't have him very high in the tier list to begin with because I didn't think AD Kayle was that big of a deal. I guess Riot did think that AD Kayle was that big of a deal because they pretty much hard nerfed him, plus the nerfs from Bloodthirster, which was the main item that kind of allowed AD Kayle to be good. So AP Kayle will remain in B tier. I think the Baron lane can be playable in the right circumstances, but it's not great. But you definitely have a lot of variety in the Baron lane. Ambessa is another champion I would like to quickly talk about. I think that the nerf was honestly pretty bad for lane Ambessa. She's still decent in the jungle, but overall not a great pick in the Baron lane. Moving on to the jungle, and this is where we've had quite a few changes, a lot of buffs and nerfs. The main 2 buff champions that I want to talk about are Kha'Zix and Vi. Vi was obviously already an extremely strong champion, and she has one of the most frustrating ultimates in the game because I guess Cleanse is the only thing you can really do against it. But if you don't have Cleanse in the early game, most champions just can do nothing, right? You just get point and click ulted, and then she immediately uses her first ability to even knock you back a little bit. Extremely frustrating and one of the easiest ganks in the game to pull off, and they've lowered her ultimate cooldown, so she's going to be able to get even more ganks off in the early game. She's not a super hard carry jungle, she does rely on your team quite heavily, but if you do have a good team, Vi is a great champion to really snowball your winning lanes. If you guys haven't seen my 91% win rate duo queue video, I definitely recommend you check that out, because in that video I am playing Vi and I'm kind of displaying how you can play around the winning lane with Vi to snowball them even further. So I definitely think Vi belongs in the God tier. She will be joined by Kha'Zix, who received some insane damage buffs and some cooldown buffs on his first ability. His clear speed is so fast and he's one of the best invaders in the game. What's cool about Kha'Zix that not a lot of people know is that when you invade the enemy, the jungle camps do not count for isolation because they're not the enemy's camps, right? They're not teammates of the enemies or minions of the enemies. So you can, if someone is standing next to red buff, they still count as isolated. So Kha'Zix has some of the best invades in the game. So if you're better than the enemy jungler, you can hard punish the enemy jungler. But even if you're not, Kha'Zix still a solid pick. I've been playing him with Manamune. I'm not sure what the best build for him is right now, but I've been having a lot of success with Manamune. If you have been watching my stream, you know how OP Kha'Zix can be. Of course, Lee Sin, no changes made to him. She continues to be in the God tier. One champion that did leave the God tier is Ambessa. She did receive some nerfs. I have her in the S tier because I still think she's pretty good. She's comparable to the other S tier champions, but obviously I don't think she belongs in God tier anymore. Jace I've put in A tier. I don't think I had him in my jungle tier lists before, but he has joined the A tier. I think he's a solid choice and he's definitely viable in the jungle, right? Again, all the champions in A tier I think are actually pretty good depending on the situation. It's the B tier and C tier champions where you start kind of question, right? B tier champions I think can be okay situationally, and C tier I think are just bad and you shouldn't play them, to be honest. So yeah, I do think that he's somewhat viable. But I don't think that he's as good as I thought he would be originally with the buffs. However, if you want to play Jace jungle, please feel free to play it. Moving on to the mid lane, and here I don't really think there's any God tier champions. I did have Ori in the God tier, but I don't necessarily think she's that much better than any of the other mages in the God tier. I do still probably think Ori is the best champion in the patch, with Kassadin and Aurora as well, but I definitely wouldn't put her in God tier. I think all the champions in S tier are really good, and I don't think that any of these champions is exceptionally good in God tier. Like a really good Yasuo can definitely beat many of these champions. Heimerdinger can be super oppressive if you're playing him right. I obviously think I'm a little biased because I'm one of the best Ryzes in the server, but I think Ryze is one of the strongest champions. You guys already know how strong Syndra is. Zoe, when played properly, is insanely good. And he's a bit of a noob champ, but she can have extreme value with Tibbers. So I think all the champions in S tier are actually really good. And I don't think that there is a champion that's just God tier above the rest. One of the main reasons why I put Kassadin usually in God tier in these tier lists in the last few weeks to months is because Kassadin pretty much counters all of these champions. Other than Yone and Yasuo, Kassadin is a counter to every single other champion in S tier. And this is the reason why I've been putting him in God tier, but I don't necessarily think he's that much better than other champions. Especially if you can get like a good matchup into Kassadin, like the Irelia, who's actually in B tier, but in certain situations can be really good. Like the Jace now, who's a lot more viable. I actually have him in A tier for the mid lane. So under the right circumstances, all of these champions can be really good, but I don't think there's any of these mid laners that's just way exceptional and should be included in the God tier. Overall, we haven't had too many changes in the mid lane, so let's move on and talk about the ADCs. So we've actually had a lot of changes on the ADC role, the most important of which are the buffs that Varus got, not this patch, but the patch before that. Actually, some insane buffs. The buffs to his second ability are absolutely crazy. His on-hit build right now is just way too oppressive. I don't think that other builds are even close to being as good as the on-hit build, where you go Berserker Greaves, Terminus, Hurricane, and then like Riftmaker. You can even throw in some AP in there with Nashor's Tooth. Overall, I think his on-hit build is just definitely above the rest. But there's some really good ADCs this patch. Jinx received some buffs that were definitely not needed. I thought Jinx was already in a really good spot, especially with an Enchanter support like the Milio, like the Lulu, like the Yumi. So definitely S tier. And we did get some buffs on Twitch and Kalista. I don't think that the buffs are that good to really make them some of the best champions. I think they're a lot more viable. I think I had them in C tier before. I think they're viable and I think they're okay, but I don't think that they're OP by any means. Kai'Sa is in the B tier as well. I don't think Kai'Sa is very good either. I think her on-hit build is okay, but overall I don't think she's super OP or anything like that. Zeri also received some buffs, I think the patch before this. Zeri, I don't think she's very good. She's okay. She's playable, but I wouldn't rate her as good as the rest of the ADCs that I actually think are pretty good right now, especially because of how strong ADCs are. Even with the Bloodthirster nerfs, I think ADC is still in a really good spot, and you can definitely carry games from ADC. But of course, you can only carry an ADC if you have a good support, so let's look at the best supports this patch. Not many changes. Rakan, Nautilus, still the best engaged support, with Milio and Zilean being the best enchanter supports. But again, with support right now, you have so many choices. I do think that enchanters are the best, and Rakan kind of fulfills that role of an enchanter, right? With his third ability shield, his first ability heal, he's a great peel, engage, and enchanter support. But out of the non-enchanter supports, the best supports are the ones that just heavily counter the enchanter supports, right? This is why Galio is low, Braum is low, Swain is low, like all these supports that kind of struggle against enchanters are low. But but the ones that can really engage on the supports and mess them up, like the Pike, like the Blitzcrank with his grab, like the Maokai, like the Alistar, like the Leona, these engage supports that are really good against enchanters are higher up in my list. But I definitely think it's a bit of an enchanter meta right now. But if you are really good at engage supports, you can definitely counter that if you play the right champions. So that is it for my tier list. If you have any questions, concerns, or you just think I'm straight up trolling, leave them down in the comments. I do like learning from you. I know a lot of people are very critical of my tier lists, but it does help me, even that, get a better perspective on the game. So I would really appreciate your feedback down below. So thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe for more Wild Rift content.